So usually we will say welcome to Legal for Tech, the podcast, but this time I will say welcome to Legal for Tech, the special episode here in Venice at the Privacy Symposium. And I will also add that today we are joined by a special guest, Rocco Panetta, and we will start with a little introduction of himself, and then we will try to do some questions. So let's start with you, Rocco. Let's start with a quick introduction of yourself. Who are you? I think most of our listeners already know who you are, but let's start to say during this chit chat together who you are.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, and good afternoon from Venice. And I'm very glad to be here with you and with all our peers that are listening and watching this podcast. Who I am? I'm a lawyer, for sure, and I'm many things because I like to evolve. I like to do new things every 6 months. I invent something and I introduce something new in our organization, in our structure, and this is something really interesting because keep us working in a funny and lively way. I'm an Italian lawyer, however, currently heading two organizations in the same one. One is the law firm, is the Panetta law firm, and I'm the managing partner. And the other one is Panetta Consulting Group. I'm the chair of this organization, and by means of Panetta Consulting, we offer external DPO services to our client, national and multinational, and also specific tailored AI consulting services to startups, a client interested in AI assistance. Having said that, I'm just here ready for
the next question.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let's start with something like, let's start from a legal case. Let's say that you have been the lawyer of this Chai AI, and how did your firm come to assist this Chai AI in the ISO investigation?
That's a good question. We had the privilege 2 years ago to intercept these important emerging new, let's say, matter of assistance is the AI case in front of the data protection authority investigations. And the first client was Replica, that was one of the, let's say, most tricky in the European scenario. Then we assisted OpenAI, ChatGPT, and so probably because of this previous experience that was really unique in the landscape worldwide. At the night, I received an email from this one of the owner of this platform called Chai, AI, not to be confused with Character AI, which is another totally different platform. And so the point was that a number of European data protection authority, including ICO, but not only, were interested in understanding details of the mechanic of the artificial intelligence services offer, and of course, you know, as in most similar cases, these emerging startups are plenty of let's say, structures and architectures built around an emerging international praxis that makes sense, more or less, but which is not in compliance with the GDPR, with the AI Act, with a number of European-based legislation, including the UK version of the GDPR. So there was let's say, an important issue of non-compliance with the data protection legislation in force.
At this point, it just came up in my mind, what were the main arguments by the ISO, raised by the ISO?
Was for sure the absence of transparency and the focus on the legal basis and the security measure around the services, which are quite reasonable issues. I always say that we should never be afraid when a data protection authority knock the door, because they want to, they raise reasonable issues that with a minimum investment, each startup, each new company could be aligned to the, let's say, the basic elements of the data protection legislation. Transparency, informative notice, the legal basis, which could be consensus or any other suitable legal basis, the mechanism relevant to the data retention, the security measure. It's 4 or 5 elements that if you are not able to show that you took care of that, it is an issue. But at the same time, if you are able to recognize the importance of that and you run in order to fill the gap, in some cases, data protection authority are satisfied because, no one in this season wants to stop the progress, stop the use of the artificial intelligence. But the artificial intelligence platform and companies that want to implement artificial intelligence software must respect data protection fundamentals and other AI legislation requirements.
I will say that if I were you, if let's say an authority will knock at my door, I will be certainly scared. But we can also see your approach, and I like the approach that you have, that is more, I want to be oriented in a way that we can satisfy also the way of going into the future. So I would like to know, you see in this case, the authority knocking at your door, what was the strategy that you put in place in this case?
The strategy was a step-by-step strategy, and of course I could not say too much about because the ICO case was successfully closed and was archived with a number of, let's say, easygoing prescriptions. But there are still other 2-3 cases pending around Europe, and so let's say that the strategy is still ongoing. But the strategy is very easy. It's a strategy aimed at showing the will of the company to respect the rules, to respect the law, and also showing the complexity from a startup in Europe, but also and much more coming from abroad, from the United States, for instance, to get a full picture of what is the minimum standard that they should guarantee in case of a company wish to offer services in Europe or by remote to the European clients.
Yeah.
And this is something that we need to think about because as a European, we often think that, of course, GDPR is there since 2018 and is also in continuity with previous legislation on data protection. So we can say that in the last 30 years, we already have implemented concept and notions like the consensus, the informative notice, and all the basic element of data protection. But this is wrong because the world is generally ignoring the existence of this legislation, or sometimes they think that that is just maybe something for the European. So it is important. Even we are now here in the Privacy Symposium in Venice, and I'm very glad to see how many international people came here to exchange views, exchange ideas, because sometimes we think that everybody knows the GDPR, everybody knows the AI Act. This is false, this is wrong. And so it is important that also Data Protection Authority realize that compliance is a journey that sometimes starts before, as the law requires, before setting up a business, but sometimes this journey starts when the business has just been launched, and if there is good faith in the operator, there is a will to fill the gap, I think that all the regulators in Europe are reasonable enough to understand that a second chance could be offered to a player that is on the right track after being wrong for a while.
We also have seen in our podcast that we are having the section that is more related to the new startups, AI startups, that really want to know about our world, our regulatory world. What could be your, I will not say solution, but better say suggestion for them? Because most of the time we have seen that we have a huge gap between the regulation and the reality. So we are moving too fast forward with the technology, but the regulation is not moving in the same direction most of the time.
Yep.
So what is your perspective, and what could be the suggestion for these new startups in this landscape, regulatory landscape?
First of all, startups and newcomers should not be afraid to try to reach acceptable level of compliance with legislation. It's a false might to say, let's go without any attention, any focus on the rules, and then we will see. This is wrong, because if you start with the right, in the right way, compliance to the law and let's say, generally speaking, the regulatory compliance could be a leverage to increase trust, a leverage to better use personal data, because the data that are under control of are in compliance with the law are more precise, are updated, are safe. And so the value of this data is infinitely wider and better of a database which is plenty of mistakes, of data that are obsolete, and so on. So it's very, very important to be in compliance as soon as possible. But you have to be careful, because in this world, it's plenty of people that sell you a compliance with maybe just a cut and paste of documents that maybe can fit for a given company, but not for you. Or there's people that just sell themselves as experts, and then so we need to be. I always suggest to be cautious in the choice, but compliance is scalable, and scalable means that the compliance for Google is not the same of the compliance required by law for a startup. There's a huge difference. And thanks God, that's why, because the GDPR and the AI Act are built around the concept of accountability, which is something really scalable.
I think what is missing to some startups that we have seen more in the past, but less now, that they didn't take into account from the beginning, let's say by design or by default, the compliant part. We have seen that most of the time, even from my super humble perspective, they say, yeah, we have our business in outside the EU, we don't care about it. And most of the time, do I care about the compliant part? No, because it doesn't take me money to the business. But then when you get the fine, you see then having some problems. So would you suggest while they're starting building something new, to take into account also the compliant part related, of course, to data. It means also to the privacy part and how they can simplify the steps. Because also we have seen that you have this other, if I can say, business that help the new startups to be more compliant or to be finally compliant. But when should I knock at your door?
But it's a very good question. And so thanks for that. Let me say that the world is very complex and is going to be more and more complicated by a number of elements that are around us, unfortunately, nowadays. And so there's no a unique solution
Of course.
for that. At the same time, and so it's also important to see which kind of operator, I want to use this word, you want to be. Because there's also, I had a client, unfortunately, thanks God, just one on the
market.
On the market, on my market,
Okay.
that at the beginning was very, very keen to be in compliance with the law, with the regulation, with what the Data Protection Authority was saying, and we prepared a very proportionate package of compliance, let's say, tool. And once they received the green light for the authority to do something, the day after they disappear. They disappear from us because they didn't pay us. This is a big problem. And they disappear from the market, not from the commercial market, but as a good operator. They decide to change their behavior, and in fact, now the authority is continuing the pressure on them.
You just said to the authority, that's my client, and they didn't pay.
No, but when the authority come to us and said, okay, now there's a follow-up, let's continue. I said, I'm sorry, because they disappear, so they are no longer assisted by us. So if you wish to have this kind of habit, of course, is not my matter. And it's plenty of criminals around the globe doing their job and whatever. But if you wish to stay on track and the fact that a company is not established in the European Union territory is not an element to ignore the European Union legislation and discipline, because as probably is not very well known, that the GDPR, the AI Act, all these digital piece of legislation have innovated a lot on the so-called principle of establishment. It means that notwithstanding and irrespective to the fact if a company is established or not in the territory of the European Union, that if this company is offering services to people that are resident or established in the territory of European Union, the legislation must be respected. And so it's important to have this in mind. Of course, there will be probably a less number of elements to be taken into consideration. And that's why I was saying the flexibility and the fact that accountability is the drivers I help a lot to have different level of compliance, even the minimum possible, which is also not very expensive for a startup.
We also have seen during the symposium, before closing time, that some huge stakeholders were just complaining about the fact that most of the time they were blaming, of course you can imagine it, they were blaming the authorities, saying there is a huge uncertainty around your regulation. We start doing certain things based on some opinion or some regulation, and we start doing, like, I can give you an example that we also discussed with Vincenzo Tiani. The problem of understanding what could be the reasonable, let's say, legal base to use in terms of a generative AI. Some were saying you can use consent, some were saying we can use legitimate interest, but there was a huge uncertainty. And at certain points, a huge stakeholder starts saying, yeah, but we start doing what was written in the regulation, but then we are certain if we are doing something right or wrong just when we get the fine. So, do you think there is really an uncertainty in our EU regulation? There is a problem that we are all, of course, around the world, we can see that some countries are moving faster than us in the name of innovation. Do you think we are losing that part? We are just two regulators and missing the innovation, or what is your perspective on it?
This is a false problem. For sure, we are missing the innovation, but not because we are regulators.
Okay.
We are missing the innovation because we have a too fragmented fiscal environment, a too fragmented landscape of incentives.
Absolutely.
With different politics in terms of how favorable could be one region or one country or one whatever you want to call it, to attract and sustain, also with financial modern tool, the development of innovation. So there's a number of more substantial issues before to touch the issues of regulation. If you think about United States is more fragmented
Absolutely.
than us because they do not have a federal law, federal legislation in the digital field. There are plenty of national legislation and legislation for sectors. So healthcare sector has its own legislation. Consumer sector has its own legislation, which vary and is different from California, Florida, Texas, and so on. What is different? Is different, first of all, the storytelling, because United States has a storytelling of itself as a very, very strong economy.
Yep.
And we have a storytelling of a fragmented environment, like a market of consumer, but not a market of producer. And this is wrong.
Good point.
So why? Because we do not have a unique foreign politic. We do not have a unique industrial politics, and so on. So that's the problem. And of course, if you have to kill something, you kill the rules, you kill the law, you kill the regulation. But this is totally wrong, because I can tell you, I'm working in this sector since now probably, how old are you?
27
years
old.
I started working in this field in 1996,
Okay.
which means 29 years ago.
Okay.
So, and I saw so many different things, and every single time that there's a crisis, it's because of the privacy legislation. This happened also in the past, but this could not be serious. A serious argument to say or to mark the difference between EU, US, EU, and China, and so on. We need to be serious on that.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right, and I love your perspective, because I think it's the first time that we have something similar in our podcast. So I'm super happy to have this chat together with you today.
Thanks a lot.
And I think I want to just thank you also the other Giacomo that is behind the camera. Say hello, Giacomo, or also ciao, because we are in Italy. And grazie mille to Rocco Panetta. Let's keep in touch for another episode.
Absolutely, grazie a voi. Bye-bye.
Bye.